It's a bird. It's a plane. Oh, it's just my dad. My dad. My dad.
Moving through the streets, with swagger and ease. Often works two jobs to take care of our needs. Taking it all in stride. Daddy seldom complains. His emotions he'll hide. All his aches and pains stays up in his head about what must be done. Taking no time off. Daddy stays on the run. He's my dad and I love him. With him I have no fear, because anytime I need him I know Daddy's right here. This game ain't social media where you're looking for likes. Deals to be made. I'm a mover and shaker. To the occasion I rise like Lisa Baker. Climbing the ladder with swiftness and ease. Spreading through the community just like a damn disease. What I do in office, minimal messages sent to you. Subliminal, taking what's not mine. A criminal, the game I play. What I do in office, minimal messages sent to you. Subliminal, taking what's not mine. A criminal. What's happening, y'all? This is your man, Sabir Aleem, and welcome to another live episode of Daddy's Right Here Live. I'm your host, as always, Sabir Aleem. Only see me in person when it's time for the race. I know none of your needs, a damn disgrace. An elected official, liquor chaser, characters. I need y'all to make this the theme song for the upcoming elections, right? Yeah. Got a whole lot of criminals in the office and outside of the office. Who are you voting for? Who really makes a difference? Huh? We just sticking with parties, or are we sticking with the facts? Do we want somebody to tell it like it is and get it done? Huh? Or do we want to keep playing the role of chumps, pussies, and not doing anything and letting people just trample on America's soil unchecked? Y'all figure this one out. What's happening, y'all? Going! Life, money, problems. What's happening? What's up, Teach? When it's time to speak up for you, quiet as a mouse. I have my own agenda, little do you know. Once getting into office, I just go with the flow. What I do in office, minimal messages sent to you. Subliminal, taking what's not mine. Criminal, the game I play. What I do in office, minimal messages sent to you. Subliminal, taking what's not mine. A criminal. You thought I'd make a difference. Gave me your trust. Like semen in a condom, no love, just lust. You want to see change, so do I. When I'm a lead, I'm committed to them. I'm not. That's it. I'm committed to the party. Bullish. Don't commit to the party. Commit to the cause. I know you won't. Invited to the party, you're having no fun. Aiding and abetting, thinking I'm gonna be the one. What? Hey, make sure you check out my music on your favorite streaming platform. Amazon, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Radio, iHeartRadio, everybody. Check it out. Yeah. What I do in office, minimal messages sent to you. Subliminal, taking what's not mine. The criminal, the game I play, political. Yep, another episode. Here we are. Let's get right on to it. So last week we were talking about pet peeves, and we were talking about, how we are shaped and molded by our caretakers first and foremost, right? Then it's another layer of family members who live in the same household. Then it's those outside in the community, in the school, because we start going to school, people start telling us things about ourselves, telling about how we walk, how we talk, if we're light skin, dark skin, straight hair, social statuses, all kind of stuff, right? Begins to shape and form, who we are. And we carry that into adulthood, right? We carry that into adulthood. And a lot of times, subconsciously, these things present themselves. But it's consciously confusing because it's easy to blame somebody else for our bad behavior. It's easy to say it's them because it's very difficult, to embrace the idea, the concept of maybe it is me. Maybe I do need to change my attitude. Maybe I do need to, you know, reform my worldview. I was just reading an article this morning on, and I'm probably going to do the show not next week, but the following week on the developmental stages of the brain. It's an article that I was reading regarding, you know, what happens to the child's brain from birth up until about 3 years old, and how it's important and how important it is, especially at that stage, to help develop the brain, because the child is in that stage of wanting to saturate themselves with their environment. So they start catching on to a lot of different things and learning how to do this and learning how to do that. My 1 year old knows how to operate her iPad already. Yeah. She used to just like it would be turned on and she would just touch and touch and touch and touch and touch the phones. Hey, what's up, Troy? She would just always touch the phone and she would see things changing. So she just kept touching it for the purpose of change, right? Then I started guiding her. We have like just specific icons on her screen where she touches them and she knows what it is that she's putting on. So she knows what she wants. So already guiding her in the area of how to get what it is that you desire to have, right? Because they don't understand the connection that happens later on when like that's not what I want in terms of people, places, things of that nature. But she has the idea now that I can make decisions. This is what I want. And she will tell you if you push the wrong one, no, I don't want. She'll tell you, no, no, no. And she'll like push your hand away and she'll go to the one that she wants because she knows on the Disney icon, she gets this. When on the PBS, she gets this. So she knows what it is she wants. She looks at the colors and she knows which one it is that she wants. And then it allows her to screen. So, she's been shown those kind of things. So she now knows, that that's what I want. And of course, we monitor screen time because that's another important part. Because if you don't monitor the screen time that a child has, especially at that young age, right? They become anti-social in many capacities, right? They become disconnected from human interaction, and that's the most significant part of development for a human being. And we have detached from humanity in so many capacities in the physical form that when we do finally see somebody, we start talking in emojis. Almost, yeah. No. So I'm telling you, that's what it actually looks like, right now. So when we start looking at pet peeves and we start looking at what she's learned already at this stage, right, of life, she's not even 2 yet. What is she going to be like at 2? What is she going to be like at 3? Right. So she sings a lot. Now I do the music thing, but where did that come from for her? It certainly isn't like genetics. I don't have it in my lineage. I'm the only one. My brother, is also, musically inclined. But like, so she sings. She just like out of nowhere sings songs. Like sometimes the songs they're not even familiar. Right? She's learning how to speak a French. My neighbor who watches her mom watches her. They're Haitian, so she's picked up all of these different the Haitian lingo and different things, and she's learning that. So I want to start teaching her Spanish as well because we do live in Florida, and we are exposed to a lot of Spanish speaking people, right? But it also helped me learn. So, but some of the stuff that she watches on TV, it teaches them Spanish. So it also part of the developmental stage is also teaching them another language. This is the best time to teach them another language because they absorb it so quickly. Like right now, I confuse Arabic tongue and Spanish language. Everything for me is because I'm used to the Arabic. But so already she's establishing her likes and dislikes. The problem with pet peeves is uh, we should be making the adjustments along the way as we mature. We know right from wrong in most instances, good or bad. Um, but with peeves become so ingrained and you become so conditioning to act it out on these certain behaviors that you don't realize how harmful it's actually being. And you want somebody to just accept you for being you. Right? It's me. This is who I am. But does that make it right? Because you choose to be that way, because you make a choice to be that way. You make a choice to act that way. You make a choice to treat people in the way that you do. You make that choice. And you make that choice based on childhood trauma, conditioning from your environment, right? You that's how you form those things. But along the way, you should also be making adjustments in terms of, you know, uh, how do I feel inside? Like, how do I feel when I act this way? How do I feel when I'm by myself and I'm hearing the same thing from my partner that I heard from the previous one, or the same thing that I heard from my mother, or the same thing that I hear from my homies, my road dogs, my girl. How many times have you heard this before? And I always use the analogy of driving because my pet peeve is like people double parking in front of a parking space, thinking that they're doing you a favor by not parking in the space, not occupying the parking space so somebody else can park there, but you're parked in front of the damn space and nobody can get in front of it. Or whatever your justification may be, right? Whatever your justification may be. That's a pet peeve for me when people double park in front of a parking space, right? If you don't want to park, well, move up because you're still inconveniencing people. It's still an inconvenience. It's still an inconvenience. But people see it from a different lens. They don't see it from that lens. They think that they're not occupying a space that they're actually occupying, or they just too damn lazy to park. Like, which one are you being? So are we talking about arrogance here? Because that's also bullish behavior. When you do things to inconvenience other people, you're sending a message to that person that you can do that you are in control of things, that you run and stuff. Another pet peeve, again, always using the analogy of driving, right? People who don't use signals, people who change lanes, don't use signals, right? These are the people who are typically, they think that they got great driving skills. I got great skills. You just pay attention to what I'm doing because I'm running this. You move out of my way, right? And they just change lanes and see absolutely nothing wrong with what it is that they're doing, right? But then a lot of times you can look at their vehicle and see that this is a habit that they have not yet recognized to be their fault because they don't have to drive around with a car that looks like this and it's all scratched up and beat up. But then it goes back to values. See, when you start looking at pet peeves, you start looking at a conditioning. Then you start looking at something that you turn into now. This is a value. This is a belief that you hold near and dear to your heart. And this is how you live your life. This is what guides you. Right? In the meantime, it's destroying you. It's destroying you. It's a hard pill to swallow, man, when you realize that you have shortcomings. It's easy to say, oh, yeah, well, no, I'm not perfect. But usually when people say that, it's on the heels of one of their less endearing traits being imposed upon somebody else. But, oh, well, I'm not perfect, right? Instead of them, when they see the hurt, instead of saying at that point, wow, I'm anything but perfect. Hurting you is definitely not something I want to do. That was not my intention. And that sounds real hip, real cool, real fly, real loving and caring. But if it's not followed through with a change in behavior, it falls upon deaf ears after a while. So last week we covered, that was one of the first one we covered was being cut off in traffic or in line can trigger the wound of being pushed aside like you did not matter. So in the childhood, what did you experience in the home, that you were in as a child? What did you experience in school as a child? Did people always get in front of you in the lunch line? You found yourself like you were first in line, but somehow or another, by the time the lunch line opened, you were actually eighth or ninth in line. Um, Number two, being interrupted can trigger the wound of being talked over. How many times you just tell your children to just shut up? I'm talking. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. What do they eventually do when you ask for them to talk to you? Shut up. Right? It's a conditioning. So now it's become a pet peeve that whenever I'm talking to somebody and somebody's over talking to me, not listening to me, I don't feel like I'm being heard. I don't feel like what I'm saying is of any value, of any concern to you. Now, how I respond to that, how I react to that, right, is of the utmost importance because sometimes people can become enraged by that and just snap. And you're sitting there looking at them being the person who's experiencing, like, well, what the hell? It wasn't that deep, but it was. It was for that person. Now, how that's handled is of the utmost importance. Do you take ownership for it? Do you go ahead and lay it out and say, hey, this is an issue for me? A lot of people don't want to do that. A lot of people don't want to say, hey, this is an issue for me. It has nothing to do with you. It's me. When you do this, I feel this. It's not a blame. It's just my experience, my childhood trauma, my unresolved that comes forth. And I get angry about it. So the solution for the person who's experiencing that, who's imposing it, not the experience, because I use experience as the other person. The imposer of this, needs to take a look at why do I get so angry about this? If I delve into what took place for me as a child, then I have the ability to sort through those things and say, hey, okay, I was a child. Okay. I disagreed with the methods that the caregiver gave. I disagreed with the fact that they yelled at me all the time. And I talked about in the last show how, it was a turning point in my relationship with my mother early on in my teens when I was being accused of something that I didn't do. And in that moment, I felt humiliated, embarrassed because she was confronting me in front of someone else. And I was telling her, like, I have no idea what it is that you're talking about. And at that point, I felt like I wanted to raise my hand at my mother. Yeah. At that point, for me, it was time to go. And I hit the street. I spent most of my time in the street. I was about maybe 13, 14 when I began to do that. By the time I think I was like 15, I was really in the street, right? So that was all as a result of my unresolved, my childhood trauma, because there were things that preceded that. And that for me at that point was just when you feel like you want to raise your hand to hit anyone, especially a parent, it's time to do something different. And the only thing that I felt like I could do in that moment was to separate myself from the environment. I'm not the only one who has done that. I'm not the only one who experienced that. And I'm not the only one who has found resolve because that's what this comes down to. This comes down to what resolve you're seeking to stop being in that position. The third one we covered was eating a meal with someone on their phone can trigger the wound of being ignored. We live in that society, man, right? People come to the dinner table, everybody got the phone in hand. That and there are there are some environments that allow that to happen, and then they wonder why there is no inclusion in one another's lives when people go on their own. When people come of age and they move out and they get jobs and they go into their own lives, why the family is so splintered? Because you didn't use opportunity as a means to bring the family together. There are some cultures who believe you sit to the table, you eat, you say absolutely nothing. All you hear is chewing, chowing, sniffing. If you got some real hot, spicy food, I like mine hot. You know what I'm saying? Um, but then there are some families that's a good time to gather and have good conversation. That's the time when you get a chance to see each other. So those Sunday dinners that we used to have at grandmom's house, when grandmom transitioned, nobody picked the ball up. Nobody said, okay, we could start doing it at my house. Nobody, got, and then when the cases that you did have that, you got no support like grandmom did, right? Because everybody had already begun to splinter, because people got tired of the redundancy. And then when those people were no longer there, then they begin to sit back and they're like, wow, we used to, but you could fix that, but you choose not to fix it. And then the pet peeve becomes, well, I'm the only one who sets this up. I'm the only one, and nobody shows. Now it's a pet peeve that's been established, and now it's the family's even more splintered because you keep bringing that up. Right, wrong, or different, it doesn't matter. It's important to you, but because you took that on, because it became a matter of you wanting something to continue, where everybody else is not looking for that. So it's not saying that you're wrong. What I'm saying is that maybe you want to let it go, especially when you see the family beginning to splinter away from you because you keep bringing that up because you just won't let it go. People move on with their lives. People do with their lives what they want to do with their lives. But once you establish things, consistency, everybody begins to participate and do those things, then that should be a conversation that's had. Not just we going to grandma. Let's get grandmama, bring grandmama here. Well, we know that's hard because that was very hard to get my grandmother anywhere. Even my mother's the same way. My mother's the same way. My mother really doesn't go anyplace. My mother doesn't do weddings, definitely doesn't do weddings. But my mother doesn't go a whole lot of places, social kind of environment. She's good. And I got that from her. I'm good by myself. And I don't mean alone in life. I mean, like, I can have a wonderful time sitting here doing this with you guys, right? Seeing you guys again is always uplifting. It's always encouraging for me to keep going, when I need it, right? I can always look back and see who was on the show and be glad that those people are still hanging in there and doing their thing. And that's motivation for me. We need that, right? So, eating food, man, do something different with that. Stop allowing people to come to the table and eat with your phones. Yo, leave your phone upstairs. I'm collecting phones. Excuse me. Here's the basket. Phones. It's your house. It's your meal. You're trying to establish something. If you don't like it, okay, well, I don't have to go plates, but you can go. And I say that respectfully. I said it respectfully. Right? Well, I'm on duty. Well, I'm waiting on a call. Everybody's always waiting on a call. Well, how about the call can wait because you have call waiting? Like, leave a message. Come on. So, number 4, waiting can trigger the wound of not knowing if needs will be met. To this article. And the article is the Psychology Today article. 10 pet peeves that could be based on childhood trauma. Right? So article by Katie Gillis. That's Katie Gillis. Katie Gills. I don't have my glasses on, Katie. If I messed up your name, I'm sorry. LCSWBACS, right? And this is based on adverse childhood experiences. When we bring people into our treatment programs, we give them what's called the ACE questionnaire. It's the Adverse Childhood Experience Questionnaire. And I can tell you, just about everybody goes down and say, no, 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 I didn't have this experience. And that, and a lot of times, they just don't want to answer the questions, but for those who are actually seeking change within themselves, which you don't expect at that point in treatment anyway, which it should, well, I think it should be initiated again, depending on the level of care. If it's long-term care, I think it should be initiated again, because initially I'm not going to tell you about something I really don't know about. I can just think of things that happened in my childhood. My dad wasn't there. My mom wasn't there. I lived with grandma and things like that. Those things you can remember. You don't want to put your family out there like that. But when you start looking at counseling and start seeking resolve, right, it's confidential. That's between you and the clinician. You sit down, you have a conversation, but you have to be in a trusting environment in order to be able to look at, I have some childhood experiences, you know. We don't look at from, those of us who were born in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s. We don't look at being beat with the extension cord or one of those whips off of a tree where they take all the branches off. I forget what they call it, but we don't look at those things, from that era as being abuse. Then they came up with the department. Thank you. Then we look at the departments of human services, children and families. Those institutions that are supposed to have the best interests of the child at heart when they come and give you services, but they don't do a damn thing until your child becomes part of the system. Well, anyway, so they came into play, to tell you, no, belt is wrong. Yeah, belt is wrong. Not only does belt leave physical marks, belt leaves traumatic indentations. Yeah, yeah. And I 100% agree. So then what did that do? If I 100% agree, what does that mean for me? That means I got to delve more into what happened, with me coming up and, what I got my behind with. So I was not only, so I was looking at why did she beat my behind like that? And again, not saying anything negative about, my mother. My mother did a great job in raising me. Look at me. Hell, but I'm just saying, I had to look at my perception, because it wasn't questioning why and delving into who my mother is, who my father is, or other caretakers, my Uncle Frank and my Aunt Deanne and my grandparents, my Uncle John, my Uncle Ray, those people. But looking at, a lot of times we blame ourselves for things happening, right? So I'm looking at the whys in order for me to be able to bring resolve between my internal conflicts with, my mother, my unresolved with my mother during that time, and how I blamed her for this. So I'm looking at all those things, and I'm beginning to make the changes necessary to grow up, to mature, to stop blaming, to stop trying to find a reason for my conditioning. Blaming, well, my mother would have did this. No, it has nothing to do with if my mother this and my mother did that. But I had to start looking at the impact that belt did have. Certainly brought about a lot of respect and fear early on. But, my mother was, I think my mother's like 5'6". You'd have thought she was 6'8". But it's a matter of, it had impact. It was pain imposed upon me as a child. And it's even more painful when you don't understand why. Because we look at our caretakers as like gods, right? They know everything. They're smart. They're big people. They Wouldn't hurt me, would they? No. And then you start learning other things, and then you form an opinion. And then here we are with another pet peeve. So when it's talking here about, let me go back down. Waiting can trigger the wound of not knowing if needs will be met. Few of us enjoy waiting, but the familiar feeling of having to wait often brings up inner triggers of waiting for caregivers who were distracted or otherwise unable to meet our needs in that moment. This left the child wondering if their needs would be met. Think about that for a minute. So, and again, the expectation of a caregiver is that they give care. Now, at 3, 5, 9, I have no idea what caregiver even means. For real. What I'm interpreting and what I'm internalizing is what they're demonstrating towards me. My 1-year-old knows mom, dad, and she knows her siblings. Does she know what mom represents? Does she really know? No. Children, we're all born totally self-centered. So if I cry, I want a response. Now, you have to teach me control of that impulsive behavior. That impulsive behavior. Right? Now, here's what you have to look at. Early on for me, I was in a whole different lifestyle. I was in a whole different zone. I was unable to meet some needs. I was physically present, but spiritually, mentally, I wasn't available because of my own unresolved. Those things don't go away because you have a child. Like, okay, I'm a father now. Yes, I'm father. Well, I was never taught. The representation, the responsibilities, the duties, the obligations of father. Because my understanding and my interpretation of father was provided to me by a abused woman. A woman who had expectations of a man to treat her right, to treat her good. My mother never kept me away from my father. Let's be clear on that. She sent us to see him. But her experience trickled down to us, to me. I look just like my father. So hell, that's a hell of a reminder. Right? You understand what I'm saying? Need you to listen to. So I was not available because I knew not how to be available. And that's another one of those hard pills that you have to swallow as a parent. Parenting doesn't come with a booklet. This is how I parent this child. Sure, there are books, there are shows such as mine that can provide you with information on how to better do things. You know, how to better that relationship between you and the other parent and or the child. Right? But if you don't, a lot of people still aren't available as adults to their partners, let alone the child. Let alone the child. You have to start looking at you have to start looking at your own availability and your own unavailability. You have to accept that.
You have to accept that because at the end of the day, it's part of your conditioning and it's going to interfere with other relationships. You can't continue on that path if you want to have healthy, relationships. You can't. You can, but you can't. You can't have successful relationships, but you most certainly can keep on with that behavior, that attitude, that value. So when it talks about here, caregivers who are distracted, right? What is the distraction? You have people who have children, right? Who are in school, who are career focused, but they have a child, right? I get tired of people talking about these unplanned pregnancies. Unplanned pregnancies for me is sexual assault. If you're having sex with someone willingly and you're not using protection, it is a planned pregnancy. It's not good planning, but it's a planned pregnancy. Your plan is, I hope I don't get pregnant this time. I hope I don't get her pregnant this time. Now, I don't know what time you're looking for, but an unplanned pregnancy, right, is when it's taken, as far as I'm concerned. A sexual assault. That's unplanned. But when you're just willfully having unprotected sex, you know it can happen. You know there's a possibility of it happening. Right? But there are people who operate, most of us did, but still planning a future. So you're career focused, you're going to school, you're starting a business, you're raising children. It's a distraction. Because if you can't commit, especially during the early years of a child's life, if you can't commit to being there all the time, I'm not talking about regular work hours. I'm talking about if you're beyond the 9 to 5, right? If your day is more than the 10 hours, because you got to look at your day is actually about a 10-hour day. Well, for me, it's different because I have to drive 2 or 3 hours to and from my different destinations. But if you have a 9 to 5, on average, you work an hour away. You work 8 hours, transportation 2 hours. That's 10 hours. There's only 24 hours to the day, right? You have to look at that. We spend more time at work than we do with those who we live with. I get my staff for 40 hours a week. How much time do they actually have with their loved ones? So again, and this is why you have to look at, because you spend so much time in the workplace, it's important that you set boundaries within the workplace, because if you don't, people become attached to one another very easily. And that's where a lot of things form, consciously or unconsciously. But you become distracted because you're focusing on what's happening at the job. And at the job replaces at the home because you're spending more time there. So your relationships there begin to form. The reliance upon your staff conversationally while you're at work becomes important. When you get at home, you are still at work because work has now replaced home. So everything at home becomes okay. Let's go to bed. Okay, let's get up, get breakfast. Okay, let's do this. Let's do that. Okay, go, 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 go. Now you haven't had any time. Now couple that with having a full caseload at school, right? You got evening classes, 2 days, two evenings a week, from 6 to 9, right? Then you're getting home 10 o'clock. You're trying to settle. It's now 11 o'clock. You got to go to bed. The only real functionality that you have in a connection with your family are photographs and telephone calls. And telephone calls. You don't see your children, so they're growing up by themselves. But you made the decision that you wanted a career, and then you had a child. So when people start complaining about, well, I did this and I did that, this, that, and I did this for you, yeah, but you're not looking at the fact that first and foremost, I never asked to come into this world. I always say that to my mother. Why do I have to work? You made the decision to have me. Why do I have to now work for the rest of my life because of a decision you made? Anywho, I'm saying all this to say that when we start looking at ourselves, we start looking at what we hold against other people. We're not holding anything against them. We're holding it all against ourselves because we're the only one that feel it. Everybody else is going about their lives hunky-dory while you're walking around with a wedgie. You're all balled up in a knot. You're going through all this suffering because of what you impose upon yourself. The person who's not using signals driving up and down the highway, they're having fun. They're going in and out of traffic. They're rolling. And they're like 20 miles away from you, and you still locked and loaded in your mind about the fact that people must use their signals. These must-itises, these should-itises, these can't-stand-itises that you lock and load within yourself, they're gone. And you get to work and you talk about them. And you get home and you're still talking about it. They're gone. Why are you still talking about it? Because you have this unresolved. It's bullyish behavior. Were you bullied as a child? Think about it. Did you feel bullied by your caretakers? Are you really available? Because it talked about that in the previous one, availability, right? And now, and we're just talking now, it's distraction, right? It's choices that we make, and we have to accept the choices that we make. We have to accept that we made the choice to do these things. We made a choice. A child is deserving of every bit of attention that we have within our souls. Within our souls. My 1-year-old's mother was at a training for a week. We got on, in the evening. We did the FaceTime thing. Got to keep that contact going. Just imagine a 1-year-old not having any contact with the mother for a whole week. You know what the child will go through? What do you go through when your loved one close to you, is going for a week? Think about it. Now, here's a child that has no idea about anything that you know, because you can control that. You can prepare for it. 1-year-old can't prepare for nothing like that. So if that happened to you, how does that play out in your life today? You still waiting for somebody to do something for you that you can do for yourself? You still stuck in that period where, you're expecting the loved one to still 30, 40, 50 years do something for you so you can confirm, validate, and resolve within yourself they finally did it. Because here's the other piece. It can be 30, 40 years from now when I turn around and I do the thing for my child that they've been looking for me to do for 30 years. Like give hugs. My mother wasn't a hugger. It's funny when we hug now, hey, how you doing? This is what happens when you start aging, right? But never been a hugger, right? So now the child, right, doesn't know how to be, wants to be hugged by the caretaker. Wanted to hug my mom. Never did. Too angry. Too confused about what it is I thought she should give me as a caretaker. And then when we finally did, it was like the weirdest experience I could, just like, it was so weird. Like, oh, we're hugging. But it was more eternally emotional, because the unconsciousness woke up and it became a conscious thing, and you realize in that moment that this is what you've always wanted, and here it is. Because when you don't get it and you're coming up as a child, you suppress the need. I don't. Nah. So it becomes unconscious, has an unconscious existence, and then when you're around that parent, or you talk to them, or even when you have other relationships, right? Because this plays out in everyday life. When you have other relationships and that person was groomed the same way, that the person is not big on hugging, right? And you want that from them. For some, that can be a deal breaker for the relationship. Oh, she don't like to hug. That ain't gonna work. I'm a hugger. I, when I hug, I give good hugs, and this dude is like he's scared to death. Like, why are you hugging me? Right? I'm being animated, but this is what actually happens inside of a lot of us when we're faced with those things and we don't know what to do with them. We don't know how to handle them. We don't know how to respond to them. And this is ultimately what happens. And you waste away in many relationships because you're still waiting for that person to resolve, to give to you that unmet need that you didn't get from your parents, you didn't get from your caregivers. You you want somebody else to do it. So you have a lot of girls looking for daddies, a lot of boys looking for mommies. Kind of brings to mind Baby Boy and how that came on. If you remember, if you ever watched the movie Baby Boy, look at the beginning, the intro. Yeah. And listen to what the intro was saying about the crib, about mommy, right? Listen to those things because they're very significant and it's the truth. And that's what ultimately happens in a lot of relationships. People have these expectations of their partner to provide to them what a caregiver does. So, as your husband, as your significant other, you have expectations of me that are no longer as that between a man and a woman wanting to solidify as soulmates. I need to do what your daddy failed to do. And it's also the opposite. It's also the opposite too. My daughters seek to have a man like me, you know, because of the example that I set even in my heart living, right? Which they didn't they don't recall. But I told you about my availability. I was physically there. I did their hair. I did the cooking. I made sure that the meals was fixed for them. I helped with homework. So I was there. So they saw me. But the unavailable aspects of me, the spiritual, the mental aspects of me were absent. Therefore, I failed to give to them early on what they really needed. But I have great girls, right? I have great girls. They've made good decisions. They got through school. They all got pregnant at the same time. I want to have that conversation. I told them I don't know what party y'all went to. How one called me and said she was pregnant, got blown out by her sister for getting pregnant. A couple weeks later, the other called and said, "Dad, I'm pregnant." Then a couple weeks later, another one. I'm pregnant. Like I don't know what was in the water in Philly, but they all got pregnant at the same time, and they all had girls. But it's a matter of you having to take ownership, not for the sake of the other person, but having to take ownership for yourself. Because people are going to have whatever perception they want to have of you anyway. It don't matter whether you change or you don't. It really doesn't matter because once somebody has in their mind that they dislike a thing, that thing is going to be disliked until they're ready to do something different within themselves. Again, resolve that childhood trauma, right? It's going to continue anyway. You can't change anybody. I've been in the field 30 years, and I don't believe that I can change anybody's life. I believe I'm a facilitator of change. But I can't walk into a room and bam, give you this great, wonderful information, and your life has changed. Like, you won't walk away from this show, even though this is part 2. You won't walk away from part 1 and part 2, and then all of a sudden you change. I gave you information. I'm just a facilitator. You make the decision as to whether there's anything that was said in these past 2 shows that are relevant for you and for you to begin to change. And I'm in my 60s, right? I'm still changing. I'm still seeking to change. I'm still seeking to improve. I'm still seeking to be a better person today than I was yesterday. I'm still seeking resolve to certain aspects of self. I'm still doing that. I'm moving away from the enabler aspect of self that has been to my detriment, caring for others and not caring for myself. Right? Why do I have this enabling characteristic of self? Empathy and compassion can sometimes work against you when you have too much of it. Always setting aside myself for others' benefit. Why? Why? Being hurt, being victimized by one, but taking ownership for their stuff and allowing yourself to be the perpetrator when you're the victim. Those kind of things, right? Those things come from somewhere. Those things come from something. And you're going to keep feeling that way. You're going to keep experiencing that same exact thing until at some point in time you take a stand and say enough, not to the other person, but to yourself. Because it's you. You're uncomfortable. They're not. They don't like your behavior. They can just step off and move on. You're still stuck with you. Being put on the spot can trigger the wound of being in trouble. This is a common trigger, going back to the article. This is a common trigger for people put on the spot in childhood, either by authoritarian parents or caregivers who display dysfunctional communication traits, such as triangulation and gaslighting. Oh, that's a whole show. Gaslighting in the family. And I just looked at that article, I think, 2 days ago. I'm just reading an article, a Psychology Today article on family gaslighting and how to get through it. Being put on the spot activates that part of the brain that remembers feeling stuck, worried that whatever we say will get us in more trouble. I came up in the era of family business is family business, and it stays in the house. You don't go outside the house discussing anything that happens in this home, because if you did, you were dealt with, because it's nobody's business. But again, the system, so-called systems that protect families, so-called systems that have the best interests of the child at heart, the same system that does absolutely nothing for you and or the child until the child becomes part of the system, right? That same exact, yeah, those same, yes. Hold on, we have a visitor here. Hold on. Yes. Okay. So, the whole thing with all of that is, I say leave her alone. The whole thing with all of that is you have people who like to humiliate and embarrass people intentionally. When you have an authoritarian parent, that's the one who tells you to recite the Quran, for instance. If you're Muslim, recite the Quran. You know it. Stand before for the family and recite it. And if you don't do it right, chastisement comes. Chastisement. Come, y'all, come on out the hallway. Chastisement comes. And then you're standing there, you're embarrassed, you're humiliated, you feel all these things um, within, and then you just kind of want to crawl under a rock after it's all over. You've made some mistakes. You mispronounced something, and in during my era, a lot of times what happens is, we have family gatherings, and one of the things that the family wants you to do, oh, come on, get up there and sing that song. Yeah, go ahead. You can sing that song. Sing it. And I don't want to sing the song. That's something that we did at home. I don't want to get out in front of the whole damn family do it. I thought that was something that we did that was fun for us. Now you're in a position where that that's just not fun anymore. And now you're humiliated and embarrassed by it. So when you're at work and it comes time to do, a presentation because, the facilitator pointed you out because you had some pretty good responses to things, and now you've been put on the spot. You were great raising your hand and being responsive, but you're not great when somebody tells you, hey, listen, Joe, come on, stand up and give us such and such. Joe's sitting there looking like you're rubber banding. And that's what it is when you go from present to childhood. You're rubber band, and we rubber band throughout the course of our days. Sometimes different events happen, and we go back to that childhood moment. So you go back to that childhood moment, like you're offended now. Like, dude, hey, don't call on me. But you don't want to do that because now you're in there with your peers, you're in there with your colleagues, you're in there with, people who have some significance to your desired goals, hopes, dreams, aspirations. So now you got to get up there, and you do it, but like you're doing it haphazardly. You try to push through the trauma as you walk up towards the front of the room. You're trying to push through that trauma, right? But you get up there and you finally do it, and then you walk away. Like you're looking around at people, and you want to see who's whispering, because it's just, it's yeah, I know what you mean, Carl. Right? Yeah, yeah, they do that. Yeah. So you kind of you got to look at those things, man, and there's something to it. It's not just anxiety, all the time. Sometimes it's just a matter of it's the trauma that you need to get. You need to work through that because it's in the way. Uh, the last thing on the list. Oh no, it's 10. It's geez, I'm not. We're not going to finish this up, and I'm not going to do a part three. Um, but you want to go to the article. Like the article is, and if you can just Google it. Psychology today, or you can just type in 10, the number 10, pet peeves, right, and it'll come up. It's a great article. It's a lot. It's so much content, man. We can just talk about this over and over and over and over again. The most important message I want you to get from this is, that I read. I've been doing this, like I said, 30 years. I still read. I read Psychology Today. I read a lot of articles on mental health, a lot of articles on substance use, because that's important. It's important to keep my mind sharp. It's important to keep myself saturated with the information. But most importantly, this helps me. I don't read these articles in depth in most cases when I present them to you. I peruse the article and it sticks. I might look at 10, 12, 15 articles, just perusing them to try to see, where it's like spinning the wheel and see where it's going to stop. I just, and somewhere along the line, something stands out. Says, what, pet peeves is really a good topic. I do that with cigars. I mean, I know what cigars I like, but I'll just go stand in the middle of the humidor and just look around. I'm doing great. Hadn't smoked a cigar for 8 days this week. I smoked one. Um, I'm using the patches. I don't have a desire to stop. I just want to get it under control and not smoke every day. But the more I use the patches, the more of a desire I have to stop. So I'm still working on that. But I let my palate guide me. What do I feel like? Do I feel like something bold, synonymy, woody? What am I looking for? But it's a matter of, listen, relationships are difficult. Relationships can change, they can improve, but you have to desire to want to improve those things. You have to want to improve those things. You can stay the same way you are for the rest of your life and never do anything different. Never do anything different. But at the end of the day, that's your life. If you want a truly a fulfilling life, a life of peace, peace begins inside. You can sit amongst chaos and be good. Be good with everything that's going on around you because you don't have those pet peeves. You don't have those must-itises, those should-itises, the can't stand-itises, what we call cognitive distortions, right? Because it's your thinking that dictates what comes out of your mouth, that dictates how you conduct yourself. It's your thinking. It's your thinking. It's the events, right, that trigger, right, your beliefs. So it's not the event. It's the belief that's been triggered. And you have to start looking at the consequences of that belief. Because that event's going to happen again. And you're going to react the same way again and again and again until you evaluate and dispute those beliefs. Because every time that person cuts in front of you without using a signal, and you still talk about it, moments, hours, days, even after it happened, that's a problem. And you need to see it as a problem. You need to see it for what it is. Because somebody else is going to do it. And somebody else is going to do it. And you're going to keep personalizing. You're going to keep internalizing. And then eventually you're going to act out. Yeah. That's where road rage comes from. Right? It takes little energy. Right? If somebody's tailgating you, it takes you little energy to hit your signal and move from in front of that person and let them have that road than to keep driving while that person is tailgating you and keep looking out the mirror, cussing them out and stressing out. How much energy that takes? It's like, I'm not moving. You just go around me. I've done it. I'm like, you got to look at the spaces you're in at the time. I've done it. I do it. Yo, dude, you need to back up off me. Yeah, you need back up. Back up. Back up. Right? You need to back up. Right? Or open up the window and point for them to move over. Right? But I could just move over and let you go. And I don't have to look at you. I stop looking at people regularly when things like that happen. I don't even look that way. For what? What are you looking that way for? What do you want? You want to let them know who's in charge? That you really in charge? That you didn't have to move? That you ain't no chump? I ain't moving. Yeah. I see those people like Monday through Friday when I go to work in prison. Yeah. Jails and prisons are filled with people who couldn't let it go. Graveyards too. But yeah, check the article out. Next week, I'm doing something I ain't did in a long, long time. Well, I don't think I ever had, maybe one time I think I had a guest on Daddy's Right Here. I've done different shows. I don't know. I did Soft Spot, which was, just me. The Wise View was the only show that there were like a couple of other brothers on the show with me. Though that disbanded, but the Wise View was about, us guys sitting around and just having dialogue, men dialogue, real stuff. Not how many Negroes we done shot and killed, how many packages we flipped. It wasn't about none of that. It was about real stuff, you know, and not that that isn't real stuff, but you want to get away from that stuff. You got to have a different conversation. You can't keep glorifying it. So I have a special guest, author Doc B, aka Felicia Burton, who has this show, Bring It to the Table, that is on LinkedIn. I think it's every Thursday at 8 o'clock. Well, should be a special guest on the show next week. Um, yeah, so that'd be my first guest. Using this platform enables you to really bring people in a lot easier than most of these other platforms. They're not cutting me a check, so I don't need to name what the platform is, but the platform allows you to connect to 4, 5, 6, 7 platforms at a time. Yeah. So right now you're watching this. Well, for those of you on Instagram, you're watching it from my phone. I have to make a choice because with the plan that I have, it's only 3 that I can use. I'm good with that. But the phone is Instagram. But on the platform, this show was actually on my Suburban Educational Station, my Facebook page, and I replaced LinkedIn with X, right? Because it's a larger audience than LinkedIn. LinkedIn is really set in its professional interactions, and you'll get a handful of people who check the shows out sometimes. But mostly, it's just about the connections for LinkedIn, which is why they call it that. So if I decide I want to do a show on some kind of, like, let's say, technology, something like that, somebody on LinkedIn say, hey, listen, this is what you do. Why don't you come on and be a guest? That's how we help each other. So there are connections. Um, but X is, more vast in terms of the audience and who you actually connect to. So that's why I changed that. But yeah, so author Doc B. Yeah, great conversation. We're gonna talk about a lot of things. Her show, um, her pathway. Yeah. Uh, but as always, you know, I'm your host, Shabir Aline, and you could be doing anything else on a Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, right? And I hope you're comfortable, right? Relaxing, chilling, with your cup of coffee and whatnot. But you could be still asleep, man, and you chilling with me this morning. I appreciate that, man. I really do, wholeheartedly. I appreciate that, because you don't have to. You can go ahead and watch the cartoons, Western, something like that. I'm about to pop on a Western. I'm in the mood. My mood today is Westerns. Yeah, old school Westerns. But as always, man, thanks for tuning in. I'm gonna see y'all next Saturday at 9 o'clock. Make sure you tune in. Peace. 13 virgin, prestige conversion, adult perversion, sex acts coercion. It was the best thing since sliced bread. Visions of a body dancing in my head. Doing things I could only dream of. You had to know for me, girl, it would be love. Following around like a puppet on the string. My curfew comes in, then her telephone rings. Reminiscing in my bed alone with myself in my hand. I'm hard as a bone. Just a young kid, all up in his feelings. All for what? A sexual healing up in my head, day and night.
But darkness falls, fantasy takes flight. Chasing a feeling, need a release. Touching girls my age, feeling the crease. Most of those girls weren't even ready to land in bed at night. Holding the teddy. Love, not any equation, young boy. Body invasion. Now you taught me when you want me, obligated to let you flaunt me. 13, virgin, pristine conversion, adult perversion, sex acts, coercion. Now I'm feeling like I had no choice, get out of my head. Boys, I'm chasing tail, running the streets. I want love no more. I'm a heartbeat. Since you learn me, toss and turn me. You want sex, cause you're lonely. No clue what you do. Both of us together don't make two. This ain't fiction, a sex addiction. Pain and fiction, it's the mission. Unbeknownst to the doer. Hey, you can check this song out on your favorite streaming platform: Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, iHeart Radio, Deezer, Amazon, wherever you flow. YouTube is there for you. The title of the song is Young. Yeah, it's about my experience at 13 years old having sex with an adult. 13 virgin, pristine virgin, adult perversion, sex acts, perversion, pleasure, rejection, body selection, your love for the person, touch erection, addicted, latex squeeze a need for the flesh, kiss me, what's love got to do with it? She wants hot something that was giving it. Took away my virginity, having sex with a child, traumatic infinity. 13, a virgin, pristine conversion, adult perversion, sex acts, coercion. 13, a virgin, pristine conversion, adult perversion, sex acts, conversion.